Disney's Cinderella and the Lost Mice, read by Amy Oakley. The stars twinkled in the clear night sky as the prince twirled Cinderella outside to dance. "Are you cold, my dear?" the prince asked his princess. "Just a bit, but—" Smiling, the prince reached for a box he had hidden under a bench. Inside was a beautiful winter coat. "Oh, it's simply lovely!" Cinderella exclaimed. "Thank you." The next morning Cinderella showed her coat to Susie the mouse. "Nice, nice," Susie nodded, and nuzzled the warm coat. Cinderella didn't notice that Susie had just come in from the cold. The tiny mouse was shivering even though the room was warm. Just then Gus and Jack scampered up onto Cinderella's dressing table. "Cinderella, Cinderella," they chattered. Cinderella didn't hear them as she rushed off to meet the prince. She didn't know that they were cold too. Soon several more cold and shivering mice entered the room. They sat in front of the fire until their teeth stopped chattering. The poor mice had spent the night in the freezing attic. They hoped Cinderella would let them stay in her warm room, but there was a problem. "Shoo! Shoo!" The cruel housekeeper barged into the room and began chasing the mice. "You're making the whole castle dirty," she shouted. "I should have the gardener haul you away." She was the reason the mice were cold and scared. They stayed in the attic to hide from her. The mice scrambled back to the chilly attic, not knowing where else to go. "Cinderella," Gus sighed. They needed her help. Suddenly, wham! The gardener slammed cages over the mice and scooped them up. "Now take them outside," shrieked the housekeeper. "Take them far enough away that they never return." Meanwhile, Cinderella and the prince were riding through the countryside. Soon they came across the gardener doing something in one of the fields. "Hello!" shouted the prince. "It's too cold to be working outside." But the gardener didn't seem to hear the prince. When the prince and Cinderella returned to the stables, the prince asked, "Do you think the gardener was acting oddly?" "Perhaps he was distracted," Cinderella replied thoughtfully. But the gardener was not distracted. He was worried about the mice. He knew that they would freeze in the fields. "Don't mention this to the housekeeper," he told his helpers, "but I want to bring those poor mice to the stables." So they took the grateful mice to their new home and even fed them. Inside the castle, Cinderella was looking for her little friends when she ran into the prince. "Why, hello," the prince said cheerfully. "Are you looking for the same person I am?" "Person?" asked Cinderella. "Why, no, I'm looking for the mice." "Ah," said the prince, "and I am looking for the housekeeper who apparently threw them out of the castle today. She said they were dirty." "Dirty? Oh, no," Cinderella cried. "They're not dirty, and besides, they'll freeze outside." "Don't worry, my dear. The mice have found a new friend." The prince then told Cinderella about the gardener and what he had done. Together, Cinderella and the prince went to the stables, where they found and thanked the gardener. Then Cinderella awakened the mice, who were snuggled comfortably in the horses' manes. "Cinderella, Cinderella," the mice shouted happily. A few nights later there was a grand ball, with the gardener as the guest of honor. The cruel housekeeper now peeled potatoes in the kitchen. She would not be bothering the mice again. Meanwhile, the mice celebrated with a banquet of their own, and as for the horses, they got extra apples all around. The end.